take a second and go back to the reference section, and let's take a glance at the lead sheet for Jeremy Burke's, which is after the two, for Jeremy Burke's How Can I Not Move. You didn't know it was right there in front of you the whole time, right? I had the answers right there.
I've been making myself not look.
Oh, you knew it, but you, okay, good. You've been making yourself not look. Okay, so let's take a glance at this. Look, we got the How Can I Not Move, says Jeremy Burke's intro. See where it says train beat there at the top? And then we got our E minor, D, G. Now let me explain a little bit about the notation there. I did the slashes, E minor for 2 beats, D for 2 beats. I could have put 4 slashes under G. It's a total option. 4 slashes under G would have worked. I also left it blank because that just says, hey, play G for the 4 bars. I wanted to make sure the slashes were there so you knew where the E minor and the D changed, so that you knew the D changed on beat 3. But with the G chord, I'm going to keep G going the whole time. So if I put a blank there, and my thought, you don't have to do this. You could have put slashes the whole way through. But when you start getting a lot of slashes, and you look at the page as a whole, like your astigmatism can start kicking in, and you're like, there's too much. So I thought visually breaking it up with a blank measure, it's not saying don't play. There's no rest. Okay? But it's just implying to the player, hey, go ahead and play all four beats. And that way I can kind of break up the monotony a little bit. I almost did in the chorus, where you see how very often in the chorus you've got F for 2 bars, C for 2 bars, E flat. I could have done 1 bar repeats as well, and that might have broken things up visually. In hindsight, I kind of wish I had, but everybody was able to read it and it worked out okay. So you notice I got the train beat indicator at the top, E minor, D, G. We repeat open until the vocal. It also says no repeat on second verse. Okay? But open means we're just going to keep going over and over till the vocal starts. When vocal starts, we've got the verse. Remember when it said play 6 times? Remember when we said the verse was 6 times? And then I made this chart right before we went into the studio. In the studio, he decided before we recorded it, hey, let's do the first and second verse back to back. So this chart does not show 2 verses. It shows play 1 verse, which is that 6 times, and then go on to the chorus. Okay, but if it was reflecting the album, I would need another verse. I would need to add that. I think I just had all the musicians, we all just wrote it in. Hey, let's do this verse twice at the beginning. So does that make sense from a map perspective? The recording has 2 verses there, but the map on the chart right now only has 1. Then it goes to the chorus. We've got the F, C, and E flat, B flat, like we see on the page behind me. Then it goes F, C, E flat, and then it goes to this other chord, A minor. And now if you look at bar 25, you've got the D, has a whole note tied to a whole note, and the C whole note tied to a whole note. So then this, hey, to the players, just play the D and hold it. Don't groove, just hold it. Then it says D, C, Al, coda. Go back to the top and take the coda when the time happens. We went back to the top, and then this time, at the beginning, intro, E minor, D, G, E minor, D, G. No repeat on second verse. So this time we skip that repeat and we keep going on. We do verse 6 times in chorus and so forth. Then there's this bridge. Now I'll also say that even though it says DC Al coda, in this chart, the way he did the recording, I didn't really need to put Al coda. Okay, because we didn't actually end up with a separate coda section. Okay, so I could have just put DC, and that would have meant go back to the top, and then when we got to the DC a second time, we would ignore it and go on to the bridge. And he ends on the bridge. Okay? So here's what I'd like for you to do. I'd like for you to sit down with this chart and the MP3 that's going to be in your email box, or it's in your email box now, and play through the song because it's slow, it's easy, the chords aren't too hard. And in your ear, listen to the bass line move. As you're listening to the song and looking at the chart, listen to the difference between the E going down a whole step to D, goes up a fourth to G, E goes down a whole step to D, goes up a fourth to G, and then on the chorus it goes down a whole step to F, down a fourth to C, up a minor third to E flat, down a fourth to B flat. Hear those movements, think about those distances, hone in, do a little bit of the things that I was doing with Audacity where I was zooming in and loop playing to hear it. In fact, it might be a good idea if you can discipline yourself to do this, is to try not to look at this chart again. See if you can recreate this chart without looking at it, especially with the chords we didn't get to yet, because there's the end of the chorus has some different chords and the bridge has some different chords. See if you can recreate it on your own And then look at the answers, if you will. Go back and look at this chart later and see how close you got it. And if you missed it, try to figure out why. Yes, Grant.
How do you figure out the G over B?
Gotcha. It gets a little trickier. Now, because Grant said, how do you figure out the G over B? Remember, again, that we're looking at finding that bass note. Where's the bottom note? Where is it? In that case, you would have found the bottom note to be B. And then in your initial stages of learning this, you would have said, is it B minor? Or is it B major? You would have tried all the B varieties and realized that none of them worked, because it's not a B chord, it's something else. And so there's a couple things. You probably would have hit B minor and gone, hey, B minor is B, D, and F sharp, right? And you would have said, maybe the bottom two, B and D sound right, but the F sharp doesn't, and maybe hunted around until you found that the G, B, D, and G worked, and went, oh, that's a G over B chord. That's the most common way that people will get there. But a lot of it's kind of trial and error as well, and doing this a bunch. That's a really, really good question. Because that's probably the biggest challenge, is hearing the alternate bass stuff. But, and I chose this song and another one because there wasn't a lot of alternate bass. It was mostly fairly garden variety chords. But now I want to go back for just a second, if you will glance at this and try not to memorize the bottom half of the page in case you're going to try to do this on your own. I want to address what Bobby was bringing up. Is obviously in the intro and verse, everything is in G major tonal center. E minor is the 6th chord, D major is the 5 chord, G is the 1, no problem. But as soon as we hit the chorus, the tonal center has shifted. F natural is not in G. It's not in the key of G. It's not in the pool of notes, right? So as soon as we hit the F chord, we're not in Kansas anymore. The tonal center has shifted. And the way I look at it, you could make a case for several things, but to me, when I play the chorus and I play those chords, to me, C feels like home. So for those couple of bars, when I hit F, how can I stand silent? C feels like home. So in my mind, I would think of the first 4 bars as being in the C tonal center, and I did a 4-chord F and a 1-chord C. That's how I would interpret it. But then all of a sudden, E flat comes in. E flat has nothing in common with the C major scale. It also, if we made the case that it was in the tonal center of F, E flat has nothing in common with the F major scale either. The tonal center has shifted. So the E flat is now a new tonal center. The way I look at it, I go, how can I not move with you? The B flat feels like home. So to me, the tonal center shifted to B flat, and I played a 4-chord E flat and a 1-chord B flat, which a lot of that will make more sense after you've gone through Module 1. Yeah, Music Theory 1. Yes, ma'am.
And I know you went over this last time, but
it's okay.
If the song's in the key of F, the tonal center can still change to B.
Yes, the tonal center can change all over the place. Okay. Most worship songs don't, but I don't mean to be mean to anybody or deride anybody, but it's because most of us we settle for just the garden variety, 3 or 4 chords of whatever key is, and there's so much more variety of expression when shifting the tonal center. So I think most musicians outside of the church, shifting the tonal center is such a commonplace thing that it's just kind of understood. But church musicians go, that sounds like a wrong chord. No, it's the beautiful chord. It's just you're only used to the diatonic music that gets handed to us. So I'm purposely using, even in my examples, every single one of these had tonal center shifts all over the place, because the more your ear starts appreciating those sounds, hopefully the more you might be, the tendency you might to start shifting the tonal center in your own songs and in your own improvisations.
But you're still in the key of F, right?
Well, now in this song, the overall key is G. Okay. The overall key is G because the E minor, D, and G, that's all G major. The key of the song can be a key, but the tonal center can shift temporarily, right?
We come back into G.
Because you end up coming back to, you see at the end of the bridge, at the end of the chorus, you have bar 23 and so on, is A minor, the 2 of G, D, the 5 of G, C, the 4 of G, and then you go back to the top, and suddenly we're all back in Kansas again. And also all of the bridge is in G. So the bulk of the song is in G. The tonal center just shifts a couple of times on the chorus. Mm-hmm. Yeah? And it's beautiful. I love it. Did that answer your thing of why it works? Yeah. Okay, so Grant, what you got?
Kevin Spacey?
That's my little joke.
Okay.
And when you get there, I think it'll make sense. I really was just going to write the word Spacey, because that's kind of the 5. If you'll notice at the very top, I had train beat.
Right.
At the chorus, I said halftime. It's kind of an indicator of the feel and the style, not just for the drummer, but to everybody. and that the bridge, it kind of goes spacey. And so I just wrote Kevin Spacey because I thought it was funny in the moment.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever put that on a chart before. I wanted to actually, it was more of an Easter egg to see who would discover it, so you win.
Not a musical term.
You win. Not a musical
I
term.
honestly
That was me
thought
being
you made
silly.
it a musical term.
Could have been.
That'll be found in the glossary in the back of your book.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and bring this to a close because we're going to do a part 2, because the next part of transcribing, basically what we've been doing is finding the bass note and then the quality and mapping it out, which we did with Jeremy Burke's How Can I Not Move. Feel free to look ahead. There's not much more to see in the notes, but the notes we're talking about doing the same exact thing but doing it with a melody and transcribing that melody. But I'm going to go ahead and hold off on emailing the next song on transcribing melody, and we'll do that first next week and do a Module 12 Part 2. Is that cool? Because this one's gotten pretty long as well. So we will have Module 11 Part 2 next week with transcribing melody. There's a homework assignment on page 25. In this case, I'd like for you to look at only the first of the 2 parts, because the second part is about melody that would relate to what we would be doing next week in terms of teaching you. I'd like you to try to take a shot at the first part of the homework that says transcribe and write out a rhythm chart for God is Good by Leonard Jones. There are a couple of chords that you haven't learned, but get the bass notes at least, and as many of the chords as possible, and that MP3 will also be in your inbox. If you want to take a stab at the second half of the homework, great, but I won't assign it until next week after we've gone through some melody transcribing techniques, okay? Thank you very much, and God bless you.